Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the weekly kickoff. All right, now just looking at the news services, just get a grasp of what's happened over the weekend. Now, what we're seeing across the board here is a little bit more airtime for the BOJ, talking about maybe it's time for a rate hike and that they are ready to react on rapid FX moves, right? Now, this is not a surprise with dollar yen sort of tweaking up towards that 160 level. Okay, so it's sort of right there. They can't really do too much, right? Because the dollar at the moment is in a sort of strong sort of fundamental position. And, fighting that is like a recipe for disaster. Now, just looking at the major currency pairs or the major instruments, right, as we go into the week, looking for sort of signs of a shift in trend or something that we can focus on. Now, we've got the dollar index, which is tweaking towards the top side. And that obviously coincides with the tweak in the downside of the euro. Now, those two pairs, euro is 58% of the basket that makes up the dollar index. That's why I mentioned those two together. Now, dollar Swiss, okay, has sort of broken down here, right? So it is worth keeping a track of. It isn't going down like a lead balloon by any stretch, but definitely worth focusing on. Dollar yen, is it back on the sort of front pages with what the BOJ is talking about? Not really, but they will jump in at some stage. But I just think there's a lot of talk, not a lot of, or not enough action at this point, and that's what the market really focuses on: what the BOJ is doing and what they're not doing, right? So, but dollar CAD, okay, so it's sort of drifting still within recent ranges, as is sterling, Aussie, and Kiwi, right? So we want to see some action on these pairs to get them moving. But we are in a situation where we've got like a bit of a stalemate with some of the central banks, right? The Fed US data has been rolling over a little bit. Okay, to me, I think the worm has turned a bit. I think the dollar data is starting to sort of come out more consistently weak, but we're just not getting the follow-through data out of the other countries, right? They're sort of going into a sort of weaker phase as well. So if I just get up the calendar here, trading economics, just have a quick breeze through the calendar, we can start to sort of focus on the sort of key aspects of each day. Now, coming to Monday, markets have reconnected. IFO business climate numbers, worth a look. It's like a second tier number. But I've seen stranger things happen. What we're looking for is you focus on what the euro is doing. It is sort of drifting lower. So weaker numbers there could potentially lead into a nice, easy trade to the downside. You come into Tuesday. I know the calendar here has the Westpac consumer confidence numbers as a high impacting number. It's not, right, by any stretch. It's a bit of over exaggeration. The key number for Tuesday for me is definitely the Canadian inflation numbers. Now, the Bank of Canada is expected to cut rates. Weaker numbers here could actually sort of expedite things and have them on a sort of cutting bias. That's what we want to see on those numbers. We will be covering a live session on that. The S&P Case-Shiller numbers, home price numbers there out of the US, right? Good historical numbers, as will be the consumer confidence numbers there, right? So Tuesday, we do have some US numbers, right, up on the radar. Give us some idea, like, are we seeing weakness across the board in the US, or has it been a one-off with regards to the recent data? So that's going to be a bit of a telltale sign. Wednesday, okay, not much on, right? GFK consumer confidence numbers, US new home sales. So very little to sort of focus on there. You just sort of, what we're looking for, this is where trending markets would usually come into play, right? When you got trending markets, you like it when there's no sort of major events because it gives the trend time to perform, okay? But coming to Thursday's trading, okay, there's a few more bits and pieces. This ANZ business confidence number out of New Zealand is worth looking at. Like, it's only because if it was some random number, we have seen it move the Kiwi a couple of cents at various times. Now, the number's been a lot more consistent, but it is sort of one of the only things coming up. The economic sentiment numbers out of the Eurozone, it's like like whatever. But as I said, when we are looking at Eurozone numbers, though, weakness works with the current trend. And then really Thursday, we've got a sort of like a bout of US numbers here to sort of really work with, okay? The weekly jobless claims numbers, you get the GDP growth, durable goods, right? All sort of solid, good historical numbers that tell us a bit more about what's happening in the US economy. Once again, we're looking for that follow through of weakness in the numbers or strength to show us a bit more about what the US dollar is doing. Don't forget, this is the last week of the month, right? There's usually not as much high impacting data, but when you come into Friday, right, there's a few things here coming out here. Not really worried about the industrial production numbers out of Japan. Final GDP numbers here out of the UK, right? The final numbers are usually a bit of a fine tune, pretty close to the mark, but potential to obviously impact the market if there's some sort of level of variance. Employment numbers out of Germany, definitely worth having a look at. GDP numbers out of Canada, but the main show will be the inflation numbers there, the PCE price index, personal income, personal spending numbers out of the US, right? And you get the Michigan consumer sentiment numbers, their final numbers. Once again, usually not too variant, but let's focus on that. So we've got some good numbers Thursday, Friday out of the US. Wednesday, bit quiet. So to me, you want to be looking at Tuesday. Keep an eye on the CAD and the CAD crosses. You come into Wednesday, it's pretty quiet, and then it really gears up Thursday, Friday with those US numbers. Once again, obviously trying to tune in to get a grip, I should say, or a grasp on what the US dollar is doing. So that's where we are at the moment with the dollar, right? Or with the markets in general, I should say. Just looking at where things are as we sort of start the week, like it's things have been a little bit quiet. We are seeing a little bit of a mixed bag here on the US equity futures, and that's creating a bit of a mixed picture here on the currency majors. Like the metals sort of going up, gold, silver, platinum sort of around that mark, but oil drifting lower. And one thing we will be watching very closely as we get to those US numbers Thursday, Friday are the US Treasuries. But right now, at the moment, sterling, I guess Aussie, Kiwi, distinctly sort of going down. But you know what? We need to sort of see some action here. We want to see some numbers drop, give us some ideas around direction, and then you can start to piece it together on your charts and really work out where the good opportunities are. Euro wants to go down. It's just not getting the right numbers, either US-wise or Euro or German-wise, to give it that really distinct push to the downside. So to me, it looks like a bit of a range-bound week until Thursday, Friday, right? Obviously, Tuesday's Canadian inflation numbers, very important there. We'll be watching the performance of oil as we lead into that. But, you know, this week, maybe range trade is the way to go. We'll see how it works out. All right, guys, have a good one. All the best. Cheerio.